beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. Within this guide we will be looking at everything to do with hops in brewing. This guide will explain what you need to know to use the hops, as well as explaining the different addition types and their purposes. There is much to go through, so let's get started. Hops are used in beer recipes to provide flavour, aroma and bitterness. This bitterness in particular is very important, as if there was no bittering then our beer would be far too sweet to drink. If you look at a packet of hops, there will always be mention of an alpha acid percentage. In this example shown on screen, this is 13.3%. This is essentially its power of bittering. In beer brewing, we measure this bittering effect in what is known as IBU, which is short for International Bittering Units. As its name suggests, this is an accepted international method of measurement, unlike many other aspects in brewing, sadly. Here is part of a hop schedule from one of my shared recipes. You can see that to the right of the hop's name is a percentage. This is the alpha acid percentage, which governs how bitter the contribution will be. Below is shown the IBU of the hop addition, which is based on the amount of this hop that is used by weight, as indicated here. The more you use, the more bitter the addition will be. Then finally on the right hand side we have the timing of the hop. These hops will be added to the boil stage of your recipe. Different timings will alter the bitterness contribution of your hops. The longer that you boil your hops for, the more bitterness you will extract from them. All timings relevant to the boil in brewing are minutes remaining of the total boil time, so these 10-minute additions take place 10 minutes before the end of the boil. A brewer's total boil time can vary depending on the type of beer you are brewing and can be between 30 to 90 minutes usually. It has to be said though that the 30-minute boil is a more modern timing due to the advancement of our ingredients, whereas the 60-minute and 90-minute boils are old traditional timings. Within a beer's recipe you will obtain overall figures for your brew. Let's now look at what is relevant for hops using this example on screen. Here is the IBU, which in this example is 89. This level of bitterness, however, is really only part of the story, as a beer's balance is made up of a ratio of bitterness and alcohol, which is known as the BU-GU ratio. This is shown within this recipe on screen as indicated. Within this ratio we have bittering units being compared to gravity units, which relates to alcohol versus bitterness. This ratio is shown in beer recipes so you can see how bitter the beer actually is. The stronger a beer's alcohol, the more bitterness you will need to add to create a balance. Naturally you could decide to make the beer sweeter by using less hops and having less IBU, or go the opposite way to make the beer more bitter with more hops that will add in more IBU. A beer's balance is also dictated by beer style. Belgian beers, for example, tend to be balanced with less bitterness compared to American hop-forward beers, for example. The example shown on screen is from a triple American IPA, which is on the bitter side with an overall BU-GU ratio of 0.90, but some IPA styles will go further than this, of course. Here is a list of beers said to be the most bitter produced by breweries worldwide. Sadly this is simply based on IBU, so not the full picture, but certainly good examples all the same. I have tried some of these and frankly found them to be simply marketing exercises by the breweries concerned, as whilst they were very bitter they were simply not good or even interesting to drink. Having the right level of bitterness is key to any beer recipe when it comes to drinkability and overall taste. You will find that you can buy hops in two different forms worldwide. You have hop cones and hop pellets. Hop pellets are made from cones that are processed and then compressed to form a pellet. Hop pellets are more readily available due to how popular they are in commercial brewing. There are various reasons for this, so let's look at this now. Firstly, hop pellets are more stable and as such are easier to keep fresher for longer compared to cones. Hop pellets also take up less space when it comes to storage and also within your brewing system when you use them. In terms of brewing use, hop pellets offer 10% more bitterness when compared by weight to hop cones and are more cost effective due to this and market pricing in general. This is simply a case of supply and demand. However, there is a preference by some to use hop cones for dry hopping, as there is a belief that the aroma will be a little fresher. This is understood to be due to the process of milling that creates a hop pellet that accounts for some potential aroma loss. There are also some breweries who pride themselves on just using hop cones, who firmly believe that the end beer benefits from the natural hop cone. These points are in wide debate though, and many will find no real difference between these areas. Quite clearly though, in general, commercial breweries mostly use pellets worldwide. In the end, I believe this is personal preference, which works both ways for different reasons. There is also the problem that hop cones float rather than sink, meaning that the surface area surrounding liquid is much smaller, leading to a lower extraction of hop oils. Sure, you can use weighted hop bags, but the utilization is still lower compared to pellets. Another key area is wart losses due to hops. Hop pellets soak up considerably less wort compared to hop cones. Some brewers press the cones to release some of this wort, but for many this is another process added to their brew that they could happily do without. Even if you spend time pressing, you will still see a greater wort loss when it comes to cones compared to pellets. So as you can see and have heard, there are many benefits to using hop pellets over cones. However, I would urge you to try both hop cones and hop pellets so that you can experience the difference for yourself and then make a choice based on your own experiences and taste buds. Do not forget that we all taste things a little differently, and if you prefer the taste of hop cones enough, it may well be enough to balance them in your favour, as the downsides mentioned are going to be far less important or relevant to brewers in certain circumstances. Let's now look at the different hopping techniques used in the beer creation process from start to finish. Mash hopping is where hops are added into your mash and are mashed alongside your malt and then are removed with your grain. This is not considered by many to be a very viable way to go because the temperature of your mash is not high enough to extract much of the alpha acids that promote bittering. Because the hop oils that will be left behind by these hops will be boiled for longer, they will also lack much flavour or aroma. When used, this technique is usually within lighter styles where the subtle carryover of hop flavour can show itself. This contribution will be lost in a hoppy style. First wort hopping is where at least part of your bittering hop addition is added to the brewing system or kettle before you start your sparge. Usually this will involve from 25 to 50% of your total bittering addition, and its intended effect is to provide a more rounded bitterness. This smoother bittering effect has gained popularity in recent years, but the first wort hopping method was certainly much more commonplace going back some decades. However, it is still used by some commercial breweries and homebrewers who really enjoy the results. In my experience, this effect can be emulated by simply using bittering hops that offer a smoother bitterness like Magnum for example. Furthermore, a water profile that has a higher chloride and less sulfate will also smooth out bitterness. I have also found that adding all hop additions as part of a hop stand also lends its way to smooth out bitterness further. More on hop stands shortly. Continuous hopping is the genius invention of the Dogfish Head Brewery in the USA. This technique involves adding hops regularly during the boil, and the end effect is that hop flavour, aroma and bitterness are all very balanced, and the flavour and aroma certainly shines through further than usual. The Dogfish Head Brewery have released various beers that use this technique, and it has also proven to be popular with homebrewers too. I personally love the results enjoyed by this technique and would urge anyone who has not tried it to do so. I have released a number of hoppy recipes that implement it. Usually your main bittering is performed by the hops that you add to your brewing system at the start of the boil, as they will have the most bitterness extracted from them. Bittering hops are usually having a higher bittering potency with their higher alpha acid percentage. However, all hops added during the brew will certainly add bitterness. Bitterness extraction is at its highest though at boiling temperatures. Hops used for flavour and aroma start off being added later in the boil phase. It was once believed that this started at the 30-minute boil point, which is 30 minutes into a 60-minute boil in general, but the consensus now is that this starts at the 15-minute point to the end of the boil. It is important to realise that flavour and aroma are very closely linked due to the fact that your nose and taste buds are also very closely linked. I have a separate video on my channel that looks much more closely at this with a focus on aroma and how important it is in brewing to also improve flavour. This video includes techniques to quickly test aroma for the very best future results. Common hop timings for flavour and aroma during the boil are now shown on screen. At the 15-minute point you will also add more bitterness compared to later additions. It has become popular these days for hoppy styles to just focus on very late hop additions of a large nature to maximise on flavour and aroma at the sacrifice of bitterness. The timing of popular choice being the 0-minute hop stand, which as I mentioned earlier has the added effect of a smoother level of bitterness when the same IBU is reached. If all of your hops are added at this point, then this is known as hop bursting. In general, the hop stand's effects on flavour and aroma can be further intensified by the use of a hop back, which are commonplace in craft breweries. There are homebrew versions available in the form of the Blickman Hop Rocket or the more price-conscious Kegland Hop Missile. I personally own and use the Kegland Hop Missile, but it should be understood that both the Missile and the Rocket are almost the same. I have some generic advice on their use in various videos, including the two that you see on screen now. Dry hopping is another popular method for adding in further hop flavour and aroma. This began as a method used just for IPA styles, but this has gained popularity for use in other beer styles too in modern times. Dry hopped lagers and wheat beers have been popular, and the commercial scene has even seen dry hop ciders too. To dry hop, you add your dry hops to the fermentation vessel after a predetermined fermentation time, which can certainly vary. The contact time of your dry hops is usually going to be between 3 to 7 days, but it is known that 2 to 3 days is all that is needed, and further time carries risk that can cause permanent or temporary off flavours. Another area of caution is to ensure that dry hops are added in clean and sanitary when a bag or similar container is used. A container is useful though should you need to remove the dry hops, and also to avoid hops clogging during beer transfer. Furthermore, always ensure that you never splash when you add your dry hops, as this can lead to beer spoilage due to oxidation. You will find a full guide to dry hopping within my recent videos that require a dry hop. When it comes to dry hops and their bitterness contribution, this is something that is still in debate, though many feel that dry hopping adds in a perceived bitterness within early beer that lessens over time. For this reason, some beer software adds extra IBU for dry hops, whereas others do not. Like dry hopping, wet hopping is used to aid in aroma and flavour, but they can also add bitterness depending on how they are used. Wet hops are freshly harvested hops that can be dried in fact, and still are considered wet hops by the Brewers Association. Due to the wet hops' freshness, they will have potentially higher levels of aroma and flavour compared to older hops. However, fresh hops expire after 24 hours of harvest, so as such are not highly available to the masses. Grow your own hops to take advantage of this. The issue here though is that you will not know the alpha acid percentage. Hop tea in the brewing sense is not to be confused with hop tea that you would simply drink for its health benefits. Brewer's hop tea involves infusing hops in water at a chosen level of temperature to unlock a variety of different flavours and aroma effects. The hop matter is then filtered out to leave just behind the liquid element that can then be added to a conditioning tank or a keg, to which a finished beer is then usually added to. At higher water temperatures, the end effect can be similar to a hop stand in the brewing process, and at lower temperatures it can be similar to the effect of a dry hop. There is also that middle ground that combines elements of the two that can be very interesting for sure. And finally, let's now look at keg hopping. Keg hopping is a system method of dry hopping that can be used in addition to dry hops in your fermenter or instead of. Because your keg is being stored at beer serving temperatures, the effect is slower to release compared to fermented dry hopping at fermentation temperatures. Because of this lower temperatures, the hops can simply remain in the keg for months rather than just days like with regular dry hopping. For those that have issues with regular dry hopping leading to spoilage problems, keg hopping can be a great alternative method. I must say though that adding dry hops while your yeast is still in active fermentation is another solution to this issue. So for my recipes I use keg hopping as a way of adding more rather than as a replacement for regular dry hopping. My taste buds do detect a difference in the effect, and yours probably will too as the temperature is lower, but I do enjoy both effects equally. As with all methods, you need to let your taste buds decide for you rather than the taste buds of others. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!